Welcome back to another episode of The Vet, The Bet, The Casual. Always a pleasure to see you, Siraj. How you doing, man?
Doing good. I'm in this little, what you would call, I guess, new office space, if you will. Do you remember the Joe Rogan? Podcast with Edward Snowden?
Yeah, for sure.
So there's a scene in the very beginning where he's like, "Where are you, Edward?" And he's like, "Well, Joe, I'm just, I'm in my apartment here, and I just like to leave the lights a little dim on a back wall, just playing. Don't really want to let anyone know where my whereabouts." It's like, yeah, well,
You're embracing that Snowden effect, eh?
Yeah. Corona ain't catching me in here, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So we're coming off of UFC Vegas 16. It was it was a pretty fun card. A little bit disappointing to see so many fights get canceled last minute that I know we were really excited about. Montana De La Rosa, obviously. Nate Landwehr, I was looking forward to seeing him fight. So that was kind of disappointing to see on Saturday morning. But overall, it was a great card in terms of posted plays with all these fights getting canceled. Some of ours got canceled out, but we did go 2-2. The main one that kind of hurt us was Gian Villante. He definitely wasn't able to hang with Jake Collier the way we thought he would. But yeah, otherwise it was a profitable card. I'm looking forward to UFC 256. Some beauties on this one, including your boy Tony Ferguson. So I'm excited to dive into this one. Anything else you want to touch on UFC Vegas 16?
Not really. I think I liked what I saw. Justin James and the whole cancer aspect of the show was really nice to watch. Who knew that there were so many stories that could be put together on one card with so many fighters and personnel from the organization. So it was really, uplifting to see something like that get done for them as well. And that was nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're always rooting for James. So hopefully he can get back to it. That was a tough loss on his end for sure. And we know his motivation to try and jump back into it.
The one thing with him is that he's always getting tough opponents. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but if you look at his last 3 fights, those are very, very tough fights. And so you can't just say someone's having tough fights, though, kind of analyzing the fact that all 3 of his UFC fights since the very moment he stepped in there are absolute beasts. And on top of it, he took one on short notice at a lower weight class. So I just want to give the guy a little bit of bump for taking the fights that he's been taking in the UFC because they're beasts.
And so, yeah, with that, let's dive right into UFC 256 this Saturday. It's going to be a great card. We're looking forward to it. A few fights have already dropped from it. So let's dive into the 10 that we have. And the first one that kicks it off is Chase Hooper versus Peter Barrett. So Chase Hooper is a nice young prospect. He entered the UFC with an 8-0 record. He did lose his first one against Daniel Timur, I believe.
Timur,
Timur, yeah, sorry. So he did win that one after his loss to Alex Perez.
Correct.
Peter Barrett, he's making his UFC debut in 2020. We've seen him fight once against Youssef Zalal, and he did lose in that one. It was in decision. Zalal wasn't able to knock him out, but there wasn't a lot to see there other than the fact that he was able to get out of some of these submissions. He really lives up to that nickname of Slippery Pete for sure. I'm curious to see how he does against Chase Hooper. Where do you see this one landing, Siraj?
Yeah, so just even clean up a little bit with the Chase Hooper introduction. The big thing with him is that he actually stomped the yard in the debut against a guy like Daniel Timur and won in the first round. And then he followed that up with what was one of the most surprising losses of the pandemic. I mean, he was a huge favorite. And to be honest, I'm pretty sure we had a bit of him in a parlay as well. And Caceres, a guy that I've basically followed his entire UFC career, finally shows up in what was a very technical battle. I think Caceres, we talked about up and down fighters the last time. This is the exact same thing. I mean, a 14-12 fighter to look that good against one of the biggest prospects in the UFC, that is something to take note of. So when I look at, the opposite side with Peter Barrett, we got the older guy, the 34-year-old trying to make, that last-ditch effort coming out of Sitgodong, the biggest, camp out of Boston. So he's got a lot riding on him when it comes to, UFC veteran, that kind of thing. But Chase Hooper does need to kind of, right the ship a little bit. I think that was a very tough matchup for him because Caceres, despite the age, is one of the most well-versed and experienced fighters there is in the UFC. His age just doesn't reflect, how good he is just as a mixed martial artist. So when you look at this fight, I actually think the UFC might be throwing Chase Hooper a bone. At least they think that they are. I believe that that's where they need him to succeed. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the guy they really need him to do well. And so right now, I like the camp that Barrett comes from. I don't like that he gets taken down. I don't like that he gets submitted so easily. I think he's a bit of a grinder, but at the same time, you know, the good grinders are the ones that can kind of do everything fairly well. And I just think when it comes to UFC skill, to be able to do that is a whole different ballgame. And if this fight goes to the ground, I'm curious to see if, you know, Chase is actually able to lock this up.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, given that, let's dive right into the lines. You know, it's my favorite part of this segment. So, you know, in terms of Vegas odds, where do you see this one landing and who's the favorite?
Yeah, so I mean, based on what I just said, I'm gonna have to go with Hooper as the favorite. And, you know, I think I've been fairly generous with my lines. And if there was a fight on this card that I can kind of tell myself, like, hey, you know, there is such thing as, you know, minus 300 and stuff like that, be a little bit, you know, harder on some guys as underdogs. And so in this one, I'm going to see Hooper as a minus 275. I just think that there is enough hype behind him. I think that Caceres put on a good enough show to upset him. But at the same time, you know, Hooper should have a bit of an edge, both, you know, hype, skill, age, all of that. Tossed to the wolves in terms of Peter Barrett's, like, you know, point of view. But, you know, plus 220 for him, minus 275 for Hooper would be my take.
Yeah, and, you know, like you said, it seems like they're tossing Hooper a bone here. He does come in at a minus 400 favorite, actually. And that line is staying steady. It hasn't moved since opening, and it seems like they're pretty standing firm pat on minus 400 for Hooper.
Beautiful. I mean, I kind of even said at the beginning, right? Like, I'm still even being a little generous on fighters, and that's a clear-cut example of where I definitely was. So for me to even throw it a minus 275, minus 300 is a big deal. So to me, that's a minus 500. So you know what? I'm a roll. Way I see this is maybe an under, but at the same time, if we can see Barrett kind of, you know, withstand some of these blows and avoid some of the finishes, we could just see Hooper kind of ride out a unanimous decision. But, you know, a dog's a dog.
Honestly, that was going to be my lean to you as well. You know, Hooper in decision seems like there could be some value there for sure. So we'll take a look at that one a little closer too. And that moves us into a nice heavyweight bout. You know, I love the heavyweights and love seeing them swing. So here we got Sergey Spivak versus Jared Vanderaa. You know, I think we're pretty high on Spivak here. He comes in on an 11-2 record. His two losses are very credible. You know, he lost to Tybura and Walt Harris, who we've seen climb the ranks rapidly. He has had a couple nice wins since then. He beat Tuivasa. Most recently, he beat Carlos Felipe in decision. So very much looking forward to seeing him step into the ring again. On the flip side, we have Vanderaa. You know, he's kind of making his UFC debut after winning Dana White Contender Series. He defeated Harry Hunsucker. You know, I couldn't resist not bringing up this guy's name for sure.
I totally
But
agree.
yeah, 100%. But, you know, he ate some Hunsuckers that night and he was definitely knocked out by Mr. Vanderaa there. Apart from that, you know, I'm not really sold on him. I haven't seen a lot of credibility behind him. So, you know, I'm excited to see what you think here.
So, like, let's actually start with Vanderaa a little bit. You know, like you said, we saw him on the Contender Series. We saw him finish in the first round with some ground and pound. But you said it best. You know, we haven't seen that much from him. From an athletic perspective, I do get the vibe that he's very much of an old school heavyweight. We don't see a lot of the athletic movement, but the technical skill is there. If this fight goes to a third round, it'd be very interesting to see what he's able to bring to the table, because from what I saw in that little bit of the finish when it came to the first round on the Contender Series, for me, it's one of those things where, you know, they do a great job of recruiting good fighters at that level, but then there is a new level the moment you leave the Contender Series. You know, we saw a guy like Alex Perez, who, you know, Dana White did do his best job to sell that fight. But, you know, I almost thought Brandon Moreno deserved that shot over Alex Perez the previous time, right?
Agreed.
So it's in this case, I'm kind of finding that these guys are learning a little bit the hard way, because I think Spivak's a hungry fighter, and that's why I want to spend a bit of time on him, right? You said it best. Marcin Tybura is his one most recent loss, but then Walt Harris as well. Like, these are two guys who we've seen fight, maybe not get into title challenge or like realm there, but they've been through some of those ranks. You know, we've seen Walt Harris has recently fight Overeem. Like, these are the guys who are fighting the best of the best in the world. And Spivak is getting, you know, losses with those guys. So that's a very respectful thing. The Tuivasa win was actually very good to me from his perspective. I thought he did a phenomenal job of negating what Tuivasa brings to the table. At the same time, I believe Tuivasa has found a new wave of motivation. I was always wondering, why is this kid not working out? The heavyweight division's wide open. He's got some really good skill and power, raw talent. This kid just puts a bit of time into this game. He could be better. And that fight very specifically was one where I just thought he didn't give it his all, and I remember right up against the fence, Spivak ties up that triangle, the arm triangle choke, and it was a very easy win. I hate to say that about Tuivasa, but it was. And so going to the Felipe fight, Felipe is a bit of a talker, right? He's the kind of guy that does a lot of the beaking in the octagon. He's the guy that smiles at punches that seem to hurt him. And Spivak just kind of really took it to him in that all-around MMA type of way. I think that Spivak brings a lot to the table when it comes to the ground game and being able to avoid submissions. And his striking for heavyweight is really good. He's so athletic. And that is where I kind of just put him well above Vandeira. The athleticism, there's no real size difference. He's going to have the really good hands. He's going to have the all-around game. And obviously the just sheer UFC experience tells me Spivak has to be an absolute massive favorite.
Yeah, and looking at this matchup, these lines, I kind of had the same conclusion. It does seem to be a bit of a mismatch. Jumping right into the odds, who do you see obviously being the favorite here? Spivak, but where do you see his number line?
Yeah, it's so funny because you kind of you got me real good on that last one because I thought I was doing everybody a favor by being okay. You know what? I'm not going to be so. I don't like being hard on fighters, man. I love every single one of these guys. I don't want to make anyone feel like they're going to be a plus 300 underdog in a fight. But maybe I actually need to be a bit more honest with myself. And so in this case, I'm kind of analyzing that. Do I see Hooper as a bigger favorite than Spivak, or do I see Spivak as a bigger favorite? And honestly, I have to say Hooper has to be the bigger favorite. And so I'm going to give Spivak a minus 250, minus 270, minus 275 line for Spivak.
Where's my bell? Where's my bell?
Oh.
Where's my bell? Well done. Your initial instinct was, right on the money. He did open around a minus 230, minus 240 favorite. So that's kind of right on the money. And I don't see a scenario where we don't take Spivak here.
Yeah. And that's where even with Pies, I've kind of been discussing where we want to watch a bit more tape over the course of the week because we've been really good with locking in some fights really early. But let's give a quick talk to, we brought up Parisian. That was a guy who really did kind of not do what we expected in that heavyweight division. And so the way Pies used to criticize, the female fighters for being so unpredictable, unfortunately, I'm seeing the same thing at heavyweight now. And that's where, for me, I think I actually need a little bit more tape to be able to make a final call on, say, a guy like Vandeira. But Spivak is so skilled that I think I've made my judgment on him. But let's see if a Parker Porter type of situation might be able to happen with Vandeira. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So stay tuned for that one. All right, and so up next we got a fight that I'm actually pretty excited for. I wanted to see it earlier, but it got rescheduled.
Hey, Pies, do me a favor. Just stand up for me.
Yeah.
Stand up for me. Gavin. I'm just kidding. We don't pick favorites, but there you go. Go ahead with your introduction.
We're going to try and reduce the beaver bias on this one for sure, but this fight got rescheduled due to the Rona. Quarantillo obviously didn't take that quarantining very seriously, but all jokes aside, glad everyone is okay.
It just registered. Billy Quarantine just registered again. Oh, that was so good. That was so beautiful. Mance couldn't have a better name. That guy should get main cards just for the pandemic,
This man should get Fighter of the Year for 2020 just based on name for sure.
With that said, hop right into it. You kind of got a good little introduction for him right there. Woof.
Yeah, shit. He rocks a 15-2 record. He did win Dana White Contender Series. He beat Spike Carlisle, who we actually saw fight this past weekend. And he knocked out Kyle Nelson as well. So there's a lot of promise with this guy. He's dangerous, man. He seems like he gets better as the fight goes on. He has good adjustments. From what I've seen, he just gets more and more dangerous as the round goes. So it's really going to be on Gavin to kind of try and take advantage of that first round. Moving over to Gavin, our Canadian boy here, hard not to root for this man. He sports a 12-0 record. He's no slouch either. This is going to be a fight, in my opinion. He actually submitted our boy Justin James recently, so it's not like he's fighting slouches either. Sports that nice record. His lone loss in his career was to decision back in 2017 to Rick Glenn, right? So, this is going to be a great one. Tee it up for us here.
Yeah, so it's funny, right? You want to talk about beaver bias? I think Gavin Tucker has a beaver bias of his own. I would have loved to see where his career would have been had he not decided to only fight in Canada for most of his career. If you go look at his record, he debuted as a professional in February of 2011. And I mean, he's a Halifax kid. And I mean, he's been fighting in only New Brunswick and Halifax up until 2017, till he took the Rick Glenn fight in Alberta and lost. So can you imagine being a guy who stayed home for like the first 6 years of your professional career? Then you'd say, you know what? I'm not even going to go to the U.S. Let me just tipsy-toe over to Alberta and see if I can just stay on the home soil. Well, nah. Rick Glenn had his way, leading into a, unanimous decision. Comes back, goes back to Edmonton, and then ends up beating Sang-Woo Chu. And then we saw him fight Justin James, right? So it's an interesting career. I mean, he fought think about this, bro. He's got 4 UFC fights, and they're all of them in Canada except for last time. And now we've got our next one coming up.
He's been quarantining since 2015, man.
Yeah.
You knew it was coming.
And that's what I mean. He's got to take on the Quarantino. Like, can you imagine? Imagine leaving the country only to go fight the leading man, the main man. Like, if there was a commercial for the quarantine, who would be the guy? Billy Quarantillo.
Definitely.
And let's go into analysis based on Paiz's reaction. I mean, he said it best. Billy Quarantillo, the last time I saw him fight, such a good late bloomer. We kind of saw him, get his feeling out phase in the beginning. I think he was actually tagged with a couple of punches, if I remember correctly. But, as we got into the second, he's a really late starter, but he looks good. And I think he gets the timing. And so, really, with that said, just like our second waves, I mean, this man definitely gets a second wave in the third round. And that's where I think Gavin Tucker, actually, that cardio we saw against Justin James, I already talked about that fight where, James is moving down in weight. He's had to be, cutting weight on short notice. And so that fight, the fact that he got submitted in the third round in itself is kind of, something to think about. But, the guy looked like a beast, an absolute beast. Submitted him very cleanly, was constantly moving. His striking was so crisp. I was so impressed, man. I was just so impressed, and I just couldn't believe that a Canadian fighter who looked that good had taken this much time to kind of, he broke his quarantine in quarantine. I don't even understand. But in any case, like, we're going to see this guy really take it to Billy Quarantillo, and I'm curious to see where this line lies. Paiz, even before you do your little intro, I think this might be the closest fight right off the bat when it comes to lines, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, even before looking at the lines, the matchup on paper, it's just like, I have no idea who's going to come out of this one. It's going to be a great one. So let's dive right into the lines. Who do you see as the favorite, and where do you see the line?
Yeah, so this is really tough for me, Paiz. Like, this was the one that I spent a bit extra time in, and I was trying to figure out where can you draw the line, right? And so this is what I did. Gavin Tucker, like I said, a lot of Canadian experience, and then took on a few guys in Canada for the UFC, and then most recently, Justin James, short notice fight, had trouble cutting weight, all that, jazz. So how can Billy Quarantillo not be a favorite? So I'm going to have to say Billy Quarantillo is a favorite. But I think Tucker looked so good that there's zero chance that Billy Quarantillo deserves a minus 200 or higher. That one would get me a little angry based on what I saw from him as a fighter. I don't care what Justin James looked like. That was a guy who can fight really, really well. And so minus 150, Billy Quarantillo.
Oh, man, 2 for 2 bells, Ring them bells. Let them go. So Quarantillo is actually a minus 130 favorite, and that has stayed true to the number. It doesn't look like it's moving. This is a very, very tough one to call, and it seems like Vegas feels the same way with their line.
Yeah, and I think, Beaver bias, I think we're going to have a little, Canadian sprinkle there. I'm not going to lie. I think Gavin Tucker does have what it takes from a technical perspective to win this fight. And so when it comes to the striking, if Billy decides to go a little slow in the first round, you best believe Gavin Tucker is not. He is simply not.
I was going to say, do we see potential for a Tucker first-round finish here?
Well, those are the sprinkles that I don't mind taking anyway. But you just said it yourself. 100%. I mean, even if we're considering the man, how do we think he wins? He got a nice submission, but you've been really nice with like some of these prop bets when it comes to the end of the fights. We've put our heads together and come away with some really good ones lately. And so I would say that is like outcome for that fight is kind of some juicy lines to look into.
For sure. we'll look to lock that one in closer to Saturday, but it seems like we got some Beaver bias on that one. Hello, Mackenzie. Wow, look at her, man. Is this another catfishing thing, or does she actually look this good, man?
Well, funny story I have for you. Is there such thing as catfishing when it comes to just verbal? Like, can you be a verbal catfisher? Because I guess back in the day when there was just pagers and phones and you didn't have the video capability, you could voice catfish, right? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, I do want you to maybe just randomly pull up an interview of hers. She's 27 years old, okay? She was born in Phoenix, Arizona, okay? She's obviously a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter and has spent some time in Brazil. And, you know, I just want you to quickly pull that up, okay? It just, when you watch her transition as a career, it's very funny to see what we're dealing with here, you know?
So I'm pulling up an interview here from, looks like recently, May 30, 2020.
Let's do it. It's funny because I actually had posted that to our page because I was just, you know, it's such a funny story to me. It's a long-standing story when it comes to Mackenzie Dern because we're just like, man, you know, Phoenix is definitely, you know, developing some half Brazilians to the level where, you know, they can even change their accents at 20, you know, something years old. You can hear this, right? Like I can hear it and I'm giggling to myself. It's like, yo, what happened? Yo, what happened? Like, I'm gonna go confirm. Yes, Phoenix, Arizona, March 24th, 1993. That is her legal birthday. And birthplace.
Yeah, it sounds kind of sexy though. I'm not even gonna lie.
Yeah, that's not my point, Zane. That's not my point. My point is there such thing as verbal catfishing? Because if there is, my girl Mackenzie Dern might be flirting with some lines. Neve!
it looks like she is for sure.
This is where I need a backlight to shine on for Neve from Catfish and MTV to just like put in the air, you know? Neve, I need you. Catfishing moment. Brought to you by the Paizaan. Yeah.
So yeah, here we got Mackenzie Dern looking fine as well. She comes in sporting a 9-1 record, so you know that's looking pristine there. She's 4-1 in the UFC. You know, she has some good fights under her belt. Cooper, Cyphers, most recently Randa Marcos, who we've seen fight. You know, she does seem like a true beast, and you know, really diving into her archives. She beat our girl Montana De La Rosa as well in some next leagues. So I'm interested to see what she does, but you know, Verna's a beast, man. So we got Verna Jandabora on the other side. She rocks a 16-1 record. You know, what she did lose her UFC debut. Looks like she was, you know, kind of getting her feet wet maybe. But since then, she's submitted her next two opponents, and they're no slouches in Mallory Martin and Felice Herrig. You know, really making a name for herself. I don't know where a lot of these fights are that she accumulated back in the day, but it does seem like she does have experience and has some credible fights under her belt.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing, right? So you go from Invicta to the UFC, like that's where kind of you see the long-standing female fighters come from. The funny thing about her is the one loss she's got on her record is this girl, Carla Esparza, who I just have the softest corner for. She was a contestant on one of the Toughs for female fighters, and she's just she's a dog. Like, she's an absolute dog. She's a great wrestler, never gives up. She was the victim of Joanna Jędrzejczyk when she was just on the come up. And it's like you saw heart that you fall in love with it. You just fall in love with it. The girl is a beast, and that was the girl's only loss. And so when you think about Verna, I mean, I just really want to analyze, like, that UFC record looks great, right? But at the end of the day, Mackenzie Dern is considered one of the better grapplers when it comes to female MMA. And when you look at her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu record, I mean, she ended up losing the last 3 of her Brazilian grappling competitions, which I think maybe transitioned her into MMA, because it's so funny. By 2017, she had finished with Jiu-Jitsu, but by 2016, she had already made her debut as a pro. And so right now, it's so funny. You brought up our girl Montana De La Rosa. Mackenzie Dern has trouble making weight, okay? She started as a strawweight.
Okay.
And in that debut, she made weight. The very next fight, you know, Montana De La Rosa, catch weight because she couldn't make weight. Following fight, couldn't make weight. She says, you know what? I am not ready for strawweight. Let me go to flyweight. Makes it once for the debut. After that, return to strawweight because she thinks she can make weight. She kept going and then loses weight, like, can't make weight again. So this is a girl that kind of
Oh,
struggles.
man.
Yeah, like she kind of struggles with that part of it. But I think that when it comes to skill, she's not the best striker. But when it comes to groundwork, you see her dominate. She's a beast. She's got the body to kind of smother you. That's what jiu-jitsu is all about. You know, it's not about power. It's not about strength. It's the concept of basically octopussing another human being. And I think she's really got that ability. And that's where, for me, Jandiroba, looking at the record, like I see some submissions wins. And I've witnessed some really good overall performances from her. But Carla Esparza losses, you know, that's a wrestling match. It's a grappling match. Esparza's feisty, you know. I think Mackenzie Dern has the technical game to avoid some of those things as well. She may not be the American-style wrestler that Carla is, but she's a very, very well-versed grappler. And unless Jandiroba can really soften her up on the feet, get those legs hurting, make her uncomfortable in an area where in Dern's mind, it's like, okay, I just need to be here for as long as I need to, because at the moment I can take this to the ground, I absolutely will. And chances are I'm going to make it very difficult for her to get back up. So that's where Jandiroba really needs to unleash, because, you know, if this fight goes to the ground, you have to lean Dern, despite Jandiroba's experience, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that'll take us right into the lines there. Who do you see as the favorite and by how much?
Yeah, so like for me, I just have to give Mackenzie Dern the edge here. I mean, everyone has always talked about her, so she's got the hype factor. Recency bias for both of them is kind of there. You know, she's taken some time off, but then come back very strong. You can't argue that both of their losses are against pretty good fighters. So
yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm going to go with Mackenzie Dern. I'm going to say that it just can't be by much, but it very much could be based on hype. But let's say Mackenzie Dern at a minus 180.
Dude, what are you cheating this week or what?
I swear, you know what my life has been like for the last week, and woof, I just love this card, bro. I told you going into this card, I've been looking forward to it for weeks. It's the card I know the most fighters, just like in my head. I can watch fights for hours on so many of these guys. I'm so excited, guys.
Well, this one's not even going to warrant a bell. You actually hit it right on the head. It opened at minus 180. It's minus 185 right now. Well done. You know, that was a snipe for sure.
My boy. Let's get it. Ah!
And so do you see value in Mackenzie there sitting at that number?
Yes, 100% Pies. And the reason why I say that is because Vegas agrees with me. That's a me line too. You know what I mean? That's a me line too, in the sense that if I gave you the presumption there that I could expect Vegas to go over minus 200, but they did side with me here. That's kind of like where I was going with that type of line. And so that in return to your question, yeah, bro, I see some good value there only because if this, like, can you take a punch? I think you can. That's all I need, because I know you are competitive against anybody in the world when it comes to female fighters on the ground. I know that for sure.
Perfect, and that's what we're looking for. So looks like we're going to lock that one in.
Yes, sir. Get him. Wow, Pies, I told you I was pumped, yo.
And that takes us to the main event of the prelim. It's a nice veteran fight that we're looking forward to. I know Cub's your boy. Not sure if we're going to differ on this one, but let's see how it plays out. So, you know, Cub comes in sporting a 26-11 record. He did come off of a recent win against Kron Gracie that we touched on earlier. But leading up to that, you know, he was on a brutal losing streak. He had lost 4 in a row. You know, he's had many credible fights. He's, you know, kind of never gotten over that hump, though, it seems. You know, Frankie Edgar on multiple occasions, Max Holloway. You know, this guy, from what I see, just seems to be good, but not great. The other thing I just wanted to touch on, you know, he got injured in a grappling bout. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So I'm curious to see how he bounces back from that one, but that didn't seem like a very good injury. Pineda, he's also been around forever, and he's fought in literally every league, including the UFC. He did make his return to the UFC in 2020, where, you know, he looked great, and, you know, he fed Herbie some elbows that kind of got him the win. Curious to see where you land on this one.
Yeah, so, I mean, here's the thing. Let's quickly touch on Pineda, because, I mean, he's the kind of guy that he's just been on and off outside the UFC for so long. The real thing about him, though, is that he's been in the UFC already. He's been in Legacy. He's been in Bellator. He's been in Fury. He's been in PFL. Now he's finally making his comeback. What do I have against this guy? I don't like that he's already 35 years old, has such a rocky career only because of bad decisions. You're failing banned substance tests twice in a row in fights that you maybe you could have won anyway.
I did read that he was loving the roids.
So that's what's really funny about him, right? Like you finished both guys, you still tested positive, and so now he ended up coming back against Herbert Burns, Gilbert Burns' brother, you know, and Gilbert Burns' brother. Remember, I kind of talked a little shit about him last week because he got that knee on Nate Landor, and he just, at that point, it was like his, you know, free reign to be like, oh, you guys are talking shit about my striking. See, I show you, my striking is really good. Well, I mean, that was a really good knee and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, you know, we saw Herbert Burns go into this fight. For sure, we definitely were on the Herbert Burns train in this one because Pineda was making a debut, hadn't fought in a very long time. But if you go look at Pineda's actual background, like the fact that he's touched gold in so many different, you know, small organizations like Legacy and Fury, like these are good signs of just a fighter that does know how to win. Problem is that, you know, what was he doing back then? How was he getting these wins done? You know, so the Herbert Burns fight is a great example, but now you're taking on someone who can really do it all. And that's where, for me, you know, Cub, like you said, if there was a fight t-shirt over the course of the years that I think is my favorite, that I would buy 20 times over, give me 50 different color combinations of a Cub Swanson fight tee with his little cartoon bear and his little angry face, I'm in. Cub, hook it up, please, I beg you. So going into what we talked about, you know, we understand that it's 4 losses, right? There's one thing that you said that I really am going to correct, and I'm going to prove it rather than just kind of say it. When you look at this man's record, these are the guys that I will die being like, I'm so glad I got to watch you live out your career. First loss, Pulver. Second loss, Aldo. Third loss, Lamas. Fourth loss, Edgar. Fifth loss, Holloway. Then his 4 fight loss losing streak is Ortega, Edgar again, Renato Moicano in his prime, and Shane Burgos, who was on a huge rise before he just kind of lost the wheels to his train. So when you say he wasn't great, but he was good, dude, he was great, just not a champion. Like, that's kind of the difference. Like, Ortega has touched gold. Frankie Edgar has touched gold. Max Holloway has touched gold. Chad Mendes came really close if he was healthy against maybe Conor McGregor. And Jose Aldo, we know the story. Jens Pulver, his first, you know, loss in the WEC was to another champion. So he's a legend, bro. He's an absolute gamer. He's a legend. Now, do I think that this is a fight where he's absolutely going to win based on that? No. That's kind of why I brought up the titles. That's kind of why I brought up Pineda being the kind of guy that can very much sneak up on you. Hey, Parky Porter, how you doing out there? So that's where I kind of want to, you know, shed some light on what could be a very huge, maybe not a huge upset, but a surprise for, say, the fan favorites and mainstream fans who just see, you know, Cub Swanson's name and go, oh my God, I love him, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's going to be instinctively what a lot of the bettors do this weekend. And so let's dive right into the line there. Who do you kind of see as the favorite?
Yeah, so like, again, with kind of everything I just said, it'd be tough. It'd be really tough to not give. It's so hard to separate bias right now. Like, I'm trying to separate my brain into 2 releases right now, but it's just hard for me not to give Pineda some bump. And I don't know if it's enough bump for a favorite. So, I mean, you know what, man? I've been killing it. I'm going to go with the Bordeaux. No, I'm not going to say pick 'em. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Look at the stress, guys. Look at the stress.
Yeah, like, this is a tough one for me, guys. I'm really sorry, and I don't want to make Pies just stare at there. He's going to start losing his suspense soon. He's like, hurry the fuck by. Hurry the fuck up. It's tough. You know what? Cub Swanson, minus 125.
Oh, man, you really let your bias come into play here.
Yeah,
You could have continued that streak of bell ringing, but Pineda does come in as the favorite. He's about a minus 150, and it's actually stuck right at that number as well.
So what is Cub, out of curiosity?
He's a plus 130.
Ooh, I came close to that. At least the range is there, so I'm still looking all right. No Bellworthy, definitely not Bellworthy, but it's like, you know, at least I got away with trying to sneak in a competitive line there.
Question for you real quick before we move on to this one.
Yeah,
do you think that fight, do you think that injury has anything, you know, any impact on this fight?
The thing about MMA, man, it's just really different because when you get injured, it depends how much you lose in terms of mobility. So I'm curious to see if he really does kind of want to take it to the ground to avoid any pressure on the knee, but I just don't see that happening. I see Cub wanting to keep it standing. If he takes too many leg kicks to that injured spot, I think then you might see some wincing and some things like that. If that happens, then, you know, switch up the game plan. But I don't see these guys taking a fight unless they can at least try and make that, you know, rectified as much as possible, you know? Like, there's just no reason for Cub Swanson, of all guys, to just put his career or even, you know, next fight on the line against a guy like Pineda without making sure he's ready for it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, stay tuned for that one.
Oh my, I can't believe this is next. Fuck me. Wow. Why didn't you start?
Oh, I don't know. I thought you were going to do something.
I'm just hyperventilating. I'm just ready. This is my boy, yo.
Oh, okay.
This is my fucking goat, yo. This is my goat, dog. This is my fucking goat. I'm just hyperventilating. Like,
and what a fight we have here kicking off the main card. I don't even want to guess your excited level on this one, but I know he's your boy in Junior Dos Santos coming in at a nice heavyweight bout. I'm really excited for this card, and I can't believe this is the fight that we get to kick off the main card. So, you know, we all know who JDS is. He's been around for some time. He is on a 3-fight losing streak. If you dive a little into those losses, they're against Francis Ngannou, Curtis Blades. You know, a lot of credible fights there. And that's the definition of Junior Dos Santos' career, right? It's all credibility. You know, he has a couple losses to Cain Velasquez, Overeem. You know, he went 1-1 against Miocic, which is obviously, you know, something to say there. He did beat our boy Derek Lewis. So, you know, JDS has credibility written all over his face. On the flip side, we have CIRYL Gane, who is a beast, an absolute beast. He rocks that 8-0 record. He's 3-0 in the UFC. He did beat our boy here, Tanner Boser, which we saw recently. And honestly, man, this guy's just been licking his chops. He's had 4 canceled fights this year. He's been training the whole time throughout, just waiting for his opportunity. And now he gets a Junior Dos Santos. So, you know, this is going to be a great one. I'm so hyped for this one.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's crazy. Like, I was trying so hard to just, like, breathe through, like, the heartbeats and, like, try my best to, like, not just start sweating or, like, I've never fainted before in my life, but I could definitely faint for this one. And it's for 2 reasons. Because one, if I had to pick a personal GOAT of all time, it's definitely JDS. And you actually touched on my current personal GOAT, Derek Lewis, and they did fight each other. And my world exploded, and I loved every second of it, and it was beautiful. But, you know, the one thing that I really just, my heart goes out to JDS, right? Like, I saw you do your absolute worst, coming out to Rocky, getting me pumped up. I was there. I loved every second of it. The Cain Velasquez, JDS, you know, those were my 2 favorite boys. Just, I was waiting for the moment where I would cry in front of the screen to watch them kind of go at each other whenever that time came. And it ended up being one of the most heartbreaking trilogies I've ever witnessed. It was crazy, but you know, as when I really started getting obsessed with the sport, those were my 2 favorite guys, and you know, I owe it to them. I owe everything that I feel about this sport to those 2 guys, and so that's why I talk about them the way I do. It's the same thing to be said for Derek Lewis. The character is there, the heart is there, and it's just like the guys that really kind of stick with me. And so, yeah, am I fucking sad that he's probably going to get his ass absolutely pounded in this? Yeah, for sure, bro. Am I worried that Dana White is trying to cut fighters like absolute crazy and this guy's going to lose 4 fights in a row potentially and maybe get cut? Yeah, bro. I'm fucking pressed about it. And so let's kind of dive into it. We got Francis Ngannou, Curtis Blades, and, you know, Rosen, you know, I'm going to try to do this in one go. But Rosenstruck is, you know, one of the best up-and-coming strikers we've seen. And I think Francis Ngannou wants a title shot. Stipe Miocic, you said, this guy's gone 1-1. CIRYL Gane is the next guy in line with all of these boys trying to split up their time, okay? Like, that's the guy who's on the outside waiting for a bunch of these dudes to kind of, you know, let them figure their shit out before I kind of hop right in there. So you did touch on the Tanner Boser fight. I will mention that, you know, that was December of 2019. CIRYL Gane was actually supposed to fight early this year, early during the pandemic, and, you know, we were disappointed. Remember I was telling you, like, this is a guy that I can't wait for you to see. He's probably the next big thing to come into the heavyweight division. 100% if he sees a main card again, especially during the pandemic, he's going to become the next big thing in the heavyweight division. And so, you know, now he gets to see a main card, and, well, he gets to see a main card against JDS. So JDS has those power shots, right? I hate to call him one-dimensional, but you know, he's been picked apart now. He's been figured out in some ways. You know, the Alistair Overeem fight against JDS is what really kind of saddened me the most because it looked too easy. Overeem was able to use footwork to completely diminish any offensive game that JDS had on the feet. And it just made JDS look like a completely different fighter. And those are the things that scared me about the, you know, over the hill JDS that's still kind of fighting the UFC. Do I have, you know, a piece of my heart thinking that he'll be one of those guys that never get cut, especially because he's a heavyweight and they kind of need those names in the division? I do believe that. But 4 losses in a row. We just saw your girl, Rachel Ostovich, get cut for the same reason. So, you know, that seems to be a running rule. And that's the thing that kind of, you know, really frightens me about it.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's not the last we've seen of JDS this weekend, but diving into those odds, where do you see this one landing?
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? We just talked about kind of JDS's technical. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but CIRYL again is bringing very, very elite level kickboxing to the heavyweight division. The thing is, he's got the size, he's got the power. That's the part that should make everybody scared. He's not just coming with the punches. Guys like Francis Ngannou, be careful. This guy's got the kicks to go with the punches. So you really incorporate that into your game to that level. Like, this is a French, you know, glory kickboxer. Like, this is a guy who can strike with the best in the world. And I fear for everybody who does have to meet this guy in the octagon as he gets better. So with that said, I mean...
Yeah, and sorry, just to touch on that a little bit, you know, in terms of the tape I've seen, it seems like CIRYL really picks and chooses his spots, you know what I mean? He doesn't try and get too vulnerable. He's not in a rush to knock you out by any means, but he does have that power to do so. He kind of just picks and chooses his spots.
And you nailed something very, very, you know, clean. This is what I would kind of separate you. As you get into the lower weight classes, I mean, obviously now we're seeing such a huge growth in the power factor, but this was the tail of the tape before, right? More combos, more punches, more counters, more movement as you get into the lower weight classes. But we're almost seeing a bit of a shift in that sense as you move down, but you just nailed it, right? As a heavyweight, and you're weighing that much, do you really want to be put together, you know, 4 or 5 punch kick combos in the first and second round to only look like a dead body in the third round? That's where I believe that CIRYL again does pick his spots. And the thing about him, Paiz, is you said it best. Picking his spots because he knows that when he picks and when he lands, he lands.
Exactly.
That's the difference, right? That's the difference about picking your shots. And so, you know, I hate to say it, but like even today, I was like, maybe today's the day I have to pick a guy that's, you know, over minus 300. I have to pick a guy that does kind of fit the bill. Like, I have to force myself to do it. And funny enough, talk about willpower, Paiz. Talk about the strength of 100 men, Paiz. I am going to say that CIRYL again is a minus 300 favorite on this fight.
Oh, you were close, but he is a minus 400.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest one on the card, man.
Which makes minus 300 was my biggest one on the card, so I'm totally cool with that. Shit, this isn't water, guys. This isn't water.
Amazing. So yeah, I mean, your mentality's right there. We'll see if there's any opportunities to take CIRYL maybe in a knockout or in a parlay.
Oh, bro. The under in that fight is the bet. It's going to be minus 1,600. Right? It might be minus 1,600, but we'll see what we can do with it.
Okay. Sounds good. Man, we are really getting spoiled with this main card. This next one's going to be a beauty as well. We got Kevin Holland fighting Ronaldo Souza. And, man, what a legend that guy is. You know, what a career he's had. He is moving down weight classes to take this one into middleweight against Kevin Holland. So, you know, let's touch on Holland a bit. He's had a very busy 2020. I can't believe this is his 5th fight in the last 6 months, man. Like, what a beast.
And with COVID in the middle.
Exactly. Like, what the true definition of a fighter, you know what I mean? Yeah, he's gone 4-0 in that period. We've seen him knock out Joaquin Buckley, who's quickly rising up the ranks. His only loss in his last 9 was to Brendan Allen a while back. So, you know, we're very high on this dude, and reasonably so. And so on the flip side, you know, we got Jakar Souza here. Obviously, he has a sparkling resume, so many credible fights, you know, in his career. He is coming off of 2 losses in a row. to Blachowicz and to Hermanson, who we just saw this past Saturday. You know, it's going to be curious to see what he has. His other losses include Gastelum, Whitaker, Yoel Romero, who was just forced out of the UFC. So, you know, his resume speaks for itself. He's had 3 canceled fights himself in 2020 already. So he's itching to get back into the ring. And, you know, what a legend. This guy's 41 years old and still just trugging along, you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I definitely know. And so I'm going to just give you a quick look. Like, if I can't remember the last time this many of my, like, I'm not just going to say favorite fighters, like, the fighters I absolutely love. Like, I love Ronaldo Souza. I love Charles Oliveira. I love Tony Ferguson. I love Junior Dos Santos. This is insane to me that these guys are on this card, and I've basically been planning my entire life around today. And so here we go, Paiz. Ronaldo Souza. I have watched grappling competitions of this guy for hours. I have just sat and watched this guy in BJJ tournaments for hours and hours and hours. Him and Maya, like, I can do it for as long as you need me to. He decided to make that jump very late, which I think is kind of disappointing. But at the same time, you know, he did what he had to do to kind of make the jump and be successful right away, which is what you kind of want to do. You know, Daniel Cormier was the best example. Strikeforce was a great opportunity for a lot of these fighters to kind of transition over to the UFC when they got bought out, because Strikeforce was a very, very, you know, highly contested competition for the UFC, and they did a great job at that time. You know, Nick Diaz has some fights there too. So looking further now, like you said, unfortunately, Souza didn't get to that title area that he really hoped. He did take on, you know, the current champion as his light heavyweight debut and did lose a 5-round decision. That's good news for him, right? The thing with Souza is, unfortunately, the power only works on fighters who don't know how to strike that well. You know, like, I've seen him lay guys out, and I think he gets hungry for the knockouts. But when you do that against the fighters that are, you know, technically sound and better than you at striking, unfortunately, it doesn't go your way. You know, Souza's the kind of guy that needs to be in there constantly thinking about how to get the fight to the ground, because that's how he's going to find success. And, you know, we've seen him fight some of the best fighters in the world. And unfortunately, if they can compete on the ground and on the feet where he's not as competitive, he loses. It's just so, like, that's what happens. And so he does need to brush up the striking, and frankly, he needs to be way more aggressive with the groundwork. Problem is that the UFC has a lot of guys that do have good defensive jiu-jitsu. So at the end of the day, like, he might be able to kind of work his way to the ground and try to stay on top and get some poundage in there. But, you know, like, the competition is getting fierce, and unfortunately, it's just not as easy as to ride guys out and pull off these submissions as quickly as you normally can, you know? And that's where I feel like his career is taking a bit of a dip.
And that doesn't bode well against Holland either.
Well, yeah, because, like, let's just quickly jump into Holland right now. You know, he's got the ability to kind of keep his distance. He seems to see the fight very well. He knows when he should be distance striking. He knows when he needs to kind of land some kicks to keep himself in the game. He knows when he's been hit and kind of needs to back up a little. Like, that's where you see Kevin Holland being a very smart fighter. Now, the only area I do see it as being a tough fight for him is on the ground, because, you know, he's got a good ground game, but Ronaldo Souza's heavy. Ronaldo Souza's a natural light heavyweight now. So he's going to be going in there and trying to take this kid to the ground and really trying to, you know, muscle him into a position that's just not very favorable. Problem is, I love Holland's striking. Whether you need the power from him or whether you need the actual technical striking, you know, later in the round to score some points, he's got it all. And I think that is where, as long as he doesn't get submitted, I don't think he's going to get knocked out. But as long as he doesn't get submitted, he has a very good, you know, repertoire and potential game plan to kind of lock that fight up, probably by decision.
Wow. Yeah, that's high praise for sure. And so diving right into the lines here, who do you see as the favorite coming out in this one? This is a tough one to call, man.
Yeah, it's weird because you got all the hype train in the world versus, you know, what you would consider not only, you know, the top level pound for pound jiu-jitsu fighter in the UFC, but like a guy who's just seen it all, done it all kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the part that really just kind of rubs me a little bit. But at the same time, I just can't help but feel that in this new era UFC, with how Souza has looked in his last fights, it would shock me to not have the, you know, the favorite line on Holland just based on public play. So I'm going to go with Kevin Holland as a minus 160 favorite.
I'll give you the bell for this one. You were about to muster out the right line there, and then you decided to go a little higher. But Elizabeth, ring it up. I'm gonna still give you the bell on this.
Was it 130 then? 130 is what it was.
So he actually opened at a minus 140.
Mm-hmm.
If I look right now, he's a minus 125.
Oh, so he's really good. Okay,
shrinking a bit.
Cool.
Yeah, it does look like this is going to be a straight pick'em.
Yeah, and I mean, I see value on both sides, and it's hard for me to call the game plan. I've talked to you, I've eaten your head off on what is the deciding factor, at least for me. And it's, you see the weigh-ins and all that kind of stuff, but it really is game plan. You can look at a fighter and see how he punches, see how he kicks, see how he grapples, see how he fights against the clinch, see how he, works with boxing, all these little things. But at the end of the day, if you're not watching tape at the guy or getting coached to kind of exploit his weaknesses and utilize your strengths, it's just, that's the part where, you can't make that call without being in that corner. And so this is a tough one, man.
Yeah, stay tuned if we lock in anything for this one, but it seems like it's going to be a very, very close fight that we're looking forward to. And so up next, we got an interesting lightweight bout. We got RONALDO Moicano here fighting Rafael Fiziev. And, this is going to be an interesting one as well. Moicano, he's bounced back after a couple of tough losses. He did beat Hadzovic most recently. His one loss recently included Cub Swanson, who we talked about in depth earlier. Mm-hmm. And he also has losses to Ortega and your boy back there, Jose Aldo. Mm-hmm. He does sport a bit of a reach and height advantage. I'm curious to see if he's going to be able to use that in his favor. Whereas, Fiziev on the other side, fighting out of Kyrgyzstan, I believe, he's a little bit smaller of a fighter, and he did make his UFC debut in 2019. His lone loss came a brutal knockout, I believe, against Mustafaev. And, he's gone 2-0 since with a couple of decision wins, Gaethje and White here. Just to touch on that point earlier, he is the much shorter fighter. So I'm very curious to see if his game plan is around attacking that body and trying to keep that, distance with the height and reach advantage here. But he's a very exciting prospect. I'm curious to see where you land on this one.
Yeah, so I mean, you use the right terminology there, right? We got a good prospect here. I mean, the height, not that much difference, 3 inches. The reach is actually pretty close. So for me, it's more about, can RONALDO Moicano kind of keep the distance from like these more lunging type power shots that might lay him out? Because the one thing about Moicano is he's never won by knockout, whereas Fiziev is going to push the pace. Chen Sung-jung, Jose Aldo, Brian Ortega. Those are Moicano's losses, One thing we can say is those are all pretty good strikers. Maybe not Brian Ortega back then, but he's gotten very good now. Obviously not against Max Holloway, but against certain types of fighters, right? So that's where Moicano, I think, he's in a bit of trouble, right? Because you want to be able to kind of dictate the pace, and I just believe that Fiziev is going to be able to do that even with being a smaller guy, because Moicano needs to be really good with those distance strikes, and I just don't see it. I just don't see that, and that's the part that really bothers me. And so I was kind of doing a bit of digging, right? So we saw Fiziev go to a decision win against Mark Diakiese, the English striker that, seems to have not a lot of cards falling in the right places for him. Mustafaev is actually a huge prospect going into the UFC right now, and he actually just took a huge loss to Brad Riddell, which is the one I was just going to talk about, where we pounded Riddell. That was such a close fight, and Riddell's part of that Israel camp at King City Boxing out in New Zealand. And those guys are all on the rise. Like, they seem to very much be kind of a camp that's on the come up. And we have a guy here now who's seen the guy. That's his only loss, right? To losing to that level competition. So despite only having those 3 UFC fights against a guy like Mustafaev, Alex White, and Mark Diakiese, he still shows promise against higher quality fighters. Where I'm going with this, Pies, is RONALDO Moicano, in comparison to the 3 guys he's faced, is like oceans apart, man. Oceans apart. Like, this is a huge step, right? Because the Mustafaev one is the closest thing to one of those real contenders. Yes. But now we're coming back into it. So you gave me 2 wins. Good job. And now I think it's okay. Well, let's see what you can do against RONALDO. And that's where, if he doesn't have a really strong ground game, it's going to be tough to kind of exploit any groundwork per se. But he has a chance on the feet, man. And that's what kind of gets this really interesting.
And so in terms of favorite, who do you see as the favorite here, and by how much?
Yeah, I mean, Ronaldo Moicano has to be the favorite. I just can't see him not being the favorite based on, experience and just overall record and time in the UFC, people he's fought. So I have to say Ronaldo Moicano, but again, I just don't see this being a huge favorite. So I would say Moicano at a minus 140, minus 150. Let's go.
So this might shock you a bit. I don't know how intense the shock factor is going to be, but Fiziev is actually the favorite. He is about a minus 160 favorite, and that line has not moved. It's staying put at the minus 160 level.
Yeah, so, and it's funny because, to be honest, in terms of, where I would lean in terms of just skill and win, I really do think Fiziev has a really great chance here, Pies. The way I'm looking at breaking this down, Ronaldo Moicano is a scary fighter because of his skill factor. Like, yes, you've been good enough to get through certain guys, and, you just made your lightweight debut, and you look great. So that's where the size difference is actually going to be in Moicano's favor a little bit, but at the same time, like, there's going to be the power, there's going to be the striking factor, and I'm still unsure how much Moicano can bring to the table.
Yeah, and one thing I kind of wanted to pitch to you, it doesn't seem like either of these guys, get submitted or finish that often. It doesn't seem to be the priority. So, I was kind of looking at an over here, at over 2.5. I think might be a juicy play.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that sounds absolutely great because the one thing about this fight is you see, like, the way that they finish, it's just you don't know if they can do it to each other. That's the thing that I'm wondering. It's like, can Fiziev knock out Moicano, or can Moicano submit Fiziev? And I think the submission, for some reason, it's not adding up to me, and I think maybe that in itself could use a bit of research, but Fiziev with the knockout, that's the only thing that kind of scares me a little bit. But that's why I'm a little curious what a minus 2.5 line would look like, given that fear factor of Fiziev maybe landing the shot on a guy who has been knocked out twice, and that too recently.
For sure. So stay tuned for that one before we lock it in, but it's going to be a tight one.
For sure.
I'll try not to touch on Ferguson too much since I know you're going to take us down memory lane here.
No, but I'll be quite honest with you. Like, Charles Oliveira is in my top 10 of all time, like my personal top 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you go all out on Tony if you want, because I get to talk about my boy, and I'm so fucking excited. I'm so fucking excited I get to watch my boy fight. Fuck, I can't believe he's fighting. Oh my God. Yo, Pies, open up. Before you do this fight, I want you to open up Wikipedia and open up Charles Oliveira's page.
Okay.
First of all, what's his birthday?
89. Oh, wow.
How old is he?
Crazy. Well, he's 2 years older than you, or younger than you.
Now, go all the way down, bro.
To the date.
Go all the way down. This guy is 31. His record is 29-8. Now, look at this. Jesus. Look at the column for performances of the night and championships.
Holy shit. That's nuts.
It's
10
insane.
times.
He's legitimately one of the greatest. Like, I'm so happy he started when he was so young, because I'm gonna get 5 more years of this, hopefully. He's a big bro. Go, can you please just quickly? I don't want to go through everybody. Go look at the record now, because I'm gonna touch on a lot of this. But go look at his record now and just quickly scroll through those names that you see. And like taking he's 31 now, so at 22 he fought Donald Cerrone and got knocked out.
Wow.
Second loss of his career. This guy was fighting, bro, at fucking 18 and smashing people. He went 14-0 as a teenager, man. Like, what?
Jesus, yo.
Like, this kid is a fucking monster.
Yeah, and look at the fights that he has on his belt, man.
That's what I'm saying, bro. These losses are no joke. Like, oh, I'm gonna cry.
I don't even think I could describe an excitement level to get you enough pumped for this one. These are your boys here, so let's jump right into it. We got the number 3 and number 4 ranked light heavyweights here. Tony Ferguson and Charles Oliveira. We know enough about these guys. Ferguson, that's our boy. That's a dude. You just got to root for this guy. He should have had his title fight against Khabib, but Corona killed that. He fought in the interim championship with Gaethje, and got some kind of knocked out, not knocked out, but TKO in the 5th round. But still a very credible fight. Held his own there. Was a tough way to see him lose in that one, but his resume speaks for himself. He has wins against Cowboy, Pettis, Dos Anjos. You know, he's really deserving of that title shot, and let's see if he's able to get it, because on the flip side, Charles Oliveira, I mean, what can you say about this guy? He's no slouch either. Crazy to see that he's won 8 in a row, all by submission. You know what I mean? This guy is a submission machine. His last loss was in 2017 to Paul Felder, and you know we've seen his resume. We've seen some of the fights he's taken. Cerrone, you know, all the greats along the way. So this one's gonna. I'm surprised this couldn't be a main event or a co-main event, I guess. But you know, this is a main event style fight.
Yeah, and I mean, what you know, it's funny you say that. If the main event wasn't a title fight, you're 100% right.
This would be it.
It'd be a joke. It might have its own pay-per-view.
And it deservedly so.
Like, I would watch UFC 255 or 256, and then I would go into UFC 256, Tony Ferguson versus Charles Oliveira. Like, I would have to pay an extra $20 to see the main event. You know? That's what I'm thinking. But okay, so I'm gonna try to stay calm here and be as technical as possible. But you know, Tony Ferguson, I love the guy. But Charles Oliveira is probably, he brings out some raw emotion in me. He is just, I've seen him fight since he was literally a 20-year-old kid. I've watched every single fight. That entire win streak that he's on right now, I bet on every single fight of those. Like, it's just, he is my guy. Like, he's a kid that I've been just hoping to see the most from when it comes to title shots and stuff like that. And I'm not crazy, right? Because back then, when you're fighting guys and losing to Jim Miller was his first UFC loss, then Donald Cerrone, Cub Swanson, Frankie Edgar, Max Holloway, Anthony Pettis, Ricardo Lamas, and legends. Paul Felder. These are the guys he's losing to before his 30th birthday. What in the fuck do you mean? Is my question, first of all. Secondly, when I compare the skill that he has on the ground, I just, you said it, right? The finishes, man. You can keep somebody on the ground and you can try to octopus them and you can try to, like, you know, grapple them and keep them on the ground as much as you want. But this guy is a killer on the ground. You don't want to go to the ground with him. If you're a jiu-jitsu fighter, you're in the mirror before, you know, when they show you the little fight cam, it's like, hey, you know, coming up next. You're in the camera just like this, you know, making sure that, you know, you could throw a punch for sure because you're not going to the ground with Charles Oliveira, right? So, I mean, that's kind of why I'm so obsessed with him. I'm just so obsessed. I don't care who you are. You've gone in there and either been elite enough to outdo him or you've lost. That's it. And so at 31 years old, he's riding this massive win streak. He's finally in his prime. I just can't believe I'm talking about a guy who I've watched this much hit his prime now. With that said, let's go over to a living legend in Tony Ferguson. First of all, this guy's last loss before that Gaethje fight was against Michael Johnson, another one of the guys that I absolutely love, who was a tough finale. So that was in 2012. So here we go with Tony Ferguson beating everybody else down his path. I mean, since he beat Abel Trujillo in 2014, he basically had a performance of the night or a fight of the night all the way through and hasn't stopped. Like, he just brings it, bro. And let me tell you, so does Charles Oliveira. But now let's get technical, Paiz. Why do I feel that this is a terrible fight for my boy Charles Oliveira? In fact, before I get technical, let me break it down for you. Let's look at it from a ATS, gambling, all that fun jazz perspective. You go through Charles Oliveira's record, you can see and pinpoint certain types of fighters that unfortunately over the course of his career thus far, he hasn't been able to outsmart in a way to either get them to the ground and submit them or put up enough of an offense to steal a decision. If you look at the guys he's fought, unfortunately, Tony Ferguson falls so much into that category, and it just so happens that he might actually be the best as well. And so that is a scary factor where you think about, yeah, so Tony Ferguson on the ground is an absolute monster because Tony Ferguson on the ground is constantly trying to maul. Tony Ferguson is constantly trying to land elbows. He's got the deadliest elbows I've seen because no matter where he lands them, he seems to cut you. So all these little things of just, you know, if I could take a over-under and the amount of ounces of blood spilled in this, I'll take the over every time. Like, I just don't know who's going to bleed first, but I tell you now, if someone doesn't finish, like, this mat's painted red.
That'll line it up real nice for Figueiredo. Hey, just swimming in blood.
It's just like you see him slipping and sliding.
Now, was thinking about that the other day. It would be the worst taking a main event and having like 15 people's blood to just lie on.
It's funny. I'm going to show you a clip of Joe Lozon back in the day. Dana White actually sent him the canvas of the octagon because of how much of his own blood was on there.
No way.
Yep. I'll show you a picture of that.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. And that's a fight to watch, Pies. If we ever had like maybe even like 10, 15 minutes just to chill out while we were hanging out, or even like that's a fight you have to remind me to throw on for you. That's worth it.
All right.
Yeah. That's a 3-round worth of fight. It's Joe Lozon, and I want to say Jim Miller. I'm going to just quickly look that up just to be sure because, you know, I'm on a video right now and I don't want to be the guy that gets that wrong.
So, you know, while you're looking that up,
yes, correct.
You can kind of lean right into yeah, you got it?
Yeah, we got it.
All right, we're going to have to watch that one for sure. So, you know, jumping right into the odds for this one. Also, another one that's very, very tough to call as it can go either way. Who do you see being the favorite and by how much?
Yeah, so again, I think Tony Ferguson, just coming off of that loss, being who he is. Like, so it's funny. Like, I'm obviously ready for that question. I don't want to beat around the bush. I'm going to say it's Tony Ferguson. Just no way it couldn't be. And that's only because of everything we've seen, everyone talking about it. He's been part of the Khabib, Justin Gaethje conversation for years now. And so that to me is just like it's a new level of hype and like credibility and skill where I think that leans Vegas lines as well. So I'm going to go Tony Ferguson. But again, Tony Ferguson cannot be a minus 200 favorite against Charles Oliveira. And so I'm going to go Tony Ferguson minus 140.
Ooh, I'll give you the bell for that one. I'll give you the bell for that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me, Pies.
He's a minus 175 favorite. Line hasn't moved. It's standing pat at 175. So, you know, he's coming in a decent size favorite, but, you know, we'd consider him a mid favorite here.
You know what, Pies? I'm actually going to retract the bell for that. And here's why. Because it doesn't line up with the mentality that I had going into that line. Because that, to me, is actually more of a factor of, you know, if people start laying on this fight, I have to assume it's going to go Ferguson off the bat. It just, Charles Oliveira names just don't seem to get the bump. And so that's where I can't take the bell from you on that one because I can see that line closing at like minus 200, minus 220.
Yeah, we'll kind of monitor that one. Do you have a lean either way? I mean, based on your analysis, it seems like Ferguson has the slight edge, but, you know, is there enough value on Oliveira to take him here?
Honestly, bro, I might sprinkle that out of love, but I'll tell you right now, if there's a value bet on here, it's the under. Here's why. If Charles Oliveira musters any kind of offense against Ferguson, it's either going to be if he kind of pulls guard against the fence or Ferguson tries to take him down, which I don't think he will. It's going to be tough. It should be tough for him to find those opportunities. But Ferguson's an animal. Ferguson can land. I've seen Charles Oliveira rocked. Tony Ferguson has the hands to rock people, especially for 3 rounds. And so that's where, for me, I can see multiple game plans and coaching strategies that lead to an under. And I think that's a fight where Vegas might line up. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, well, you know, we're actually getting plus money on that as well.
Oh, you can see lines now. Before we weren't getting these on Tuesdays. Baby, we're back to talking about this live.
I wouldn't get used to it. It's probably because it's UFC 256 and not some UFC Vegas card. But no, that under is there and it's sitting at a plus 110, under 2.5. So.
Yeah, bro, that's value, man. That is value because of those reasons. Like Tony's just such a good striker, especially in comparison. But if this goes to the ground, both guys can finish. Tony with the grounded pounded, Charles.
You want to know what's pretty crazy, and you know, kind of exploiting some of that value. The under 2.5 is plus 110, but the fight to not go the distance is minus 200. Like that is serious value, and we've even seen taking under 2.5s, and it gets knocked out at say 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and you still hit it, you know.
Oh man, Pies, we have so much fun with those bets, and like, you know, like it's just I don't even know what to say to you right now. I don't even know what to tell you. I don't know what mushroom man in Vegas is like, yo, guys, you're not going to believe it, but I have this vision. The last 2.5 minutes of that 3rd round between Tony Ferguson and Charles Oliveira, watch what happens. And so that guy probably got a good little word in it.
How is that worth 100 basis points? 100 basis points. That makes no sense.
Maybe he's the team lead, bro.
Oh, we might need to have a chat with some of these odds makers here.
I mean, it reminds me of the judge from last week.
Oh, he got an earful from those commentators, that's for sure.
Oh, and then Dana White went off on him in the post-fight press conference directly.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, well, I mean, given that, let's dive right into the main event here. We got Deiveson Figueiredo against Brandon Moreno, dudes that we saw legitimately fight 3 weeks ago. In fact, we watched that one together, so very much looking forward to, these guys getting their chance now, or Moreno kind of getting his chance, and Figueiredo kind of trying to solidify himself as fighter of the year in 2020. So this one's going to be great. 3 weeks to prep. They're just going to try and carry over that momentum. Figueiredo definitely got touched up a lot less than Moreno in his last fight. That was a quick submission. I believe as soon as the fight was done, he ran over to Dana and was like, lock it in right now. The next one, I'm good to go. Whereas, Moreno had a little bit tougher of a fight against Royval. He did he did exert his dominance in that first round, but had dude's shoulder not popped out, I don't know how that fight would have continued on. But with the second to go, Royval's shoulder kind of popped out of his socket there, ending the fight. Figueiredo comes in 20-1 record. He's a true champ. Looking forward to seeing him defend his belt again. Moreno, he comes in hungry. He got his chance. I'm curious to see if he can hang with the champ here. What do you think?
I think you that last line is where I want to kind of woo you a little bit here as we get into the lines, all right? So let's talk about my man, Deiveson Figueiredo right now putting up a, dark horse candidate for fighter of the year. Can we talk about that for a quick second? In 2020, if he wins this fight, not only is he in, only title fights, but he would have won them and defended them. That's a pretty crazy factor when you think of us being in a goddamn pandemic. This guy has won the UFC flyweight title and defended it. He's 4 fights in 2020. Crazy, bro.
Curious to ask you, this has to be the quickest turnaround you've seen for somebody defending their belt, no?
Yeah, so the best way to look at it, Pies, is this. 255 to 256. Go into all 254 other UFC fight posters. You will never see another man's face and the same guy's face at the top of those posters ever. You know what I mean? Unless we're talking back in maybe UFC 20 and earlier, where some of these guys were like carrying over. Oh, the tournament's still starting, so I gotta go. Maybe that's what it is. But other than that, like modern day UFC, it's just never happened. And you're right. It is a massive turnaround. It comes down to how quick those fights were, how little damage they took. You did say that Moreno took a bit of damage. You are right in saying that, he took some punches, but that's where I actually want to take this fight into a technical talk. Brandon Moreno taking a few jabs and a couple hard punches in the first round of a fight is like you and I going outside for a quick breath of fresh air. I just don't see that having... If you watch some of his tapes, bro, and what he brings to the table in the second and third rounds of a fight, it would blow you away. I don't think we'll see something so technically sound and just something so savage. Like the 4 fighters that are in these the last 2 fights, it's savage, bro. It's just absolute savagery. They're so technical, but then also look so raw because there's blood everywhere. It's going to be amazing. And that's where you said it best. Moreno can certainly hang with Figueiredo. He is the taller fighter. He is definitely a good striker to the point where he can walk through a lot of punches. Benavidez is the stick and move type, right? Well, Figueiredo can play that game. Alex Perez was kind of trying to stick and move. And what I really felt bad about Perez was I actually thought that there was at least some indications of maybe doing better than maybe Benavidez did in that last fight. But, he kept getting caught in those moments where the grappling just took over. And it was just so amazing to see on more than one occasion Figueiredo go for the same type of move and land it. You know what I mean? That was what kind of solidified what I saw in him as a champion and just as an overall MMA athlete, because those are the things, right? A very similar example is when you're against the fence in a clinch and those guys that, you choose to separate, but in that quick second that elbow comes in right across the face, those are championship decisions. I'm going to break this down for you exactly the way I always thought of it. Think about breakaways. You know what I mean? A hockey breakaway, right? And that once they pass that blue line, bro, the amount of time they have to decide what they're going to do to score that goal is insane. You need a certain level of skill and mental fortitude to pull off both the hand skill that is required and the mental skill to make all of your body line up for that. That's what I'm saying makes champions MMA. That's what made John Jones so goddamn good. No matter how he's separated, no matter what he did, he was getting a shot in. So you're coming off of the clinch in the fence, land a quick elbow to that temple. You know what I mean? Get those knees in if they're putting their head down.
Really make the most of those opportunities.
And that's where I kind of see you have a guy who has that in him. But Brandon Moreno has just taken beatings. He's never been finished. Like what?
Wow.
He's in I'm telling you right now, bro. Deiveson Figueiredo is in a fight for his life. And I don't even want to know the lines, bro, because I'm going to tell you right now, my lean is Brandon Moreno.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. Mm-hmm. High praise. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what the line is. That's your lean on the dog,
right? I'm going to play the game. I want to play the game, and I want to know what the line would be on that lean, because then we can have a conversation quickly about just finalizing kind of how that looks as we kind of conclude the day, you know?
Perfect. So, let's jump right into it. Who do Figueiredo's the favorite? I don't even know why I brought that up, but where do you see the line going?
Yeah, no, and so I will give him a minus 200. I do think that everything in play, that is a minus 200 to a minus 250 favorite. So you know what? Let's lock it in at minus 225 as the favorite of the main event.
Before I reveal the line, who, in terms of a dog, Perez versus Moreno here, do you see them on the same level? Do you think Moreno is a better fight for him? Obviously, hindsight's 20/20 because we saw Perez get finished in the first. But just kind of approaching it going into each fight, do you believe that they are similar contenders?
No. I believe that Brandon Moreno should have gotten that title fight the first time around, but unfortunately, that was a perfect opportunity for a Dana White Contender Series fighter, probably the best fighter that's come out of it. That's probably the best fighter that's come out of the Dana White Contender Series, outside of maybe a Kevin Holland or something, but he has title implications. Kevin Holland is a little bit further away than that. So Perez was a great pull to be like, hey guys, Dana White Contender Series, check out next season. We've got some pretty good fighters. They're so good that they can, take on the champion who's already fought twice this year. So that's where I think Brandon Moreno had a chip on his shoulder going into that fight, which is why you saw him absolutely demolish Brandon Royval. And I'll be honest with you, even if that injury didn't happen, Brandon Moreno was going to wipe the floor with Brandon Royval. That's for sure.
All right, so I mean, these odds are going to make you kind of jump out of your seat then a little bit more too, because the odds for both fights are the same. Figueiredo was a minus 340 favorite against Perez, and he's a minus 340 favorite against Moreno as well. It's the exact same line as that fight.
And how funny would it have been to actually get to watch that Brandon Moreno Alex Perez fight, right? Because that in itself was the denomination in terms of which one of these guys are going to get it, and then the other guy was kind of left to fend for himself, right? The other guy was getting Brandon Royval basically, and so that's where I kind of laughed about Perez getting that fight over Brandon Moreno. And if you talk to any hardcore fight fan, I'm pretty sure they felt the same way. And it was just a really good promotional factor. And frankly, Brandon Moreno is a guy that's going to get his shot anyways. And so here we are with that opportunity heading into Saturday. My point here, Pais, the reason why, you said it best. As a gambling man, you're probably now even thinking after what I've said, Moreno is still a good bet now because of the comparison to Perez.
It's an even better bet. I'm getting the same odds when you were clearly the better contender for Figueiredo.
And this is where
music to my ears there.
Yeah, because Pais, this is where I'm going to break it down for you really quickly. Let's think about classic style boxing fights, right? That's where you see a lot of these hey, remember, we watched one together. Remember Lomachenko's fight very recently. That was a huge favorite. And just the grittier, stronger fighter just, came out to fight. And I think in this case right now, you're going to see a guy who, hey, guess what, man? I am not Benavidez. I don't need to be afraid of your punches. I'm not going to have to dance around you to land one punch. Hey, man, guess what? I'm not Alex Perez. I don't find myself getting trapped in a lot of, unfavorable positions for myself, especially that early in the fight when I have all my energy. He is a monster, Pais. He throws. So here's my thing. If Figueiredo wins, I think it's going to be by decision because I'm just finding it hard to believe that he can finish a guy. And here's the thing. Everyone can get finished once, right? I'm not even discounting that. My thing is I've seen how they've all fought. And I think I've seen Moreno take enough power shots, especially early and that kind of thing, that tells me I just don't see it happening. But, you know, power's power. Power's unpredictable. Anything can happen. If he lands this punch and he knocks out Brandon Moreno, Pies, if this kid does not win Fighter of the Year and potentially gets put in this pound for pound list, I'm a little blown away because he is slowly becoming, you know, the guy to watch in the UFC, and he revived an entire division, bro. Dana White wanted
I was going to say, weren't they going to scrap it?
Dana White was completely going to scrap this division. And it's just so funny because you had Demetrius Johnson, so you couldn't scrap it. Then you had Henry Cejudo come along, and Dana White's like, fuck, now I got to deal with this guy. And then he actually just ends up, you know, relinquishing both belts. But now you have a guy like this that ends up fighting for the, you know, vacant title and just starts demolishing everybody. That's the part that I'm just a little
dominating.
Yeah, and I'm not upset if Brandon Moreno loses. Don't get me wrong. I just think that in terms of technical skill that he brings to the table, he's now about to fight a guy who just loves to take those punches. You know, those guys that kind of enjoy the pain. I mean, Brandon Moreno seems to enjoy the pain, and I think that this is going to be a tough one.
Oh yeah, and so, you know, just for a few numbers on some plus value there, you know, Moreno is a plus 250, so you know there is the opportunity to sprinkle there. If you do think Figueiredo has a chance in decision, that's a plus 350. So him winning and finishing the fight is heavily favored.
And so that's kind of what I'm personally getting at, right? Like, you look at this and you're seeing, you know, the last time he went to a decision was Pantoja back in 2019. 4 fights since, you know, all finishes within the first 2 rounds. So for me, I get where that comes from. I just don't think that Brandon Moreno is Tim Elliott, Joseph Benavidez, or Alex Perez. That's my point. Because at the same time,
for sure,
Deiveson Figueiredo is the same guy that lost a decision to UC Formiga. You know what I mean? That's where that's what I have to tell myself. UC Formiga is also the guy that Alex Perez beat by leg kicks very quickly and very easily. So even to put that all, like they call it, right? Like, that's the MMA circus for you. It's all about the MMA match, and it just sometimes doesn't add up. But I think this is where you can use tape to be like, well, going down to Figueiredo's list of fighters, I think he might have just caught someone that enjoys taking those blows.
And it sounds like Moreno has no problem taking the blows. So even looking at an over 2.5 at even money, you know, that seems super juicy in a 5-round fight.
Totally, man. That's kind of what I'm saying, right? The thing that I love about that is that tells me that even my 1.5 is going to have enough value for me to either take it straight or maybe parlay if it hits that minus 200, 300. But like, there's no way you're telling me that that's the number for the 4.5, and then I can, you know what I mean? Like, that's what makes me excited about that, because I definitely can see.
So what you're saying is over 1.5 Figueiredo and CIRYL gain to not go the distance, huh? You're seeing that minus 200 parlay.
I really am, man. I really, really am. And that's a great snipe on your part to just pick that. Because we were seeing value on the under there, but the no distance is where I just see either fighter being able to pull it off. And we hedged the bet on that shroom guy out in Vegas who's just like having fun.
Oh, man, that is too good. So, yeah, you know, that parlay we could probably get at a plus 125. Stay tuned for that one. All of our picks are going to be locked in on Instagram, on Twitter. We'll be making sure to post all our plays, including the entire fight night card, all of our picks. As always, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Anything else you want to plug, Siraj?
Yeah, honestly, guys, this is probably gonna be my favorite card in a very, very long time, and so I'm gonna try my absolute best with Paizaan to get as much, you know, content rolling out as we can for this week. We're gonna have a lot of fun with it, and I'm excited to, you know, maybe get together with you, Pies, and watch, because this is going to be an absolute fire card. I can't wait.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait either. It was a pleasure,
good.
Siraj. Love talking
always,
to you, man.
You too, my boy. You know, maybe I'll be back in my Edward Snowden dungeon soon, but till then, peace out, y'all.
Later.